he chose at the end to go to the special forces route, the chances of getting hurt in Lebanon in the first invasion and being saved quickly is very low. You can't send helicopters, you can't send even tanks because of the ambushes and the forces that are there. It has to be by foot, it had to be commando forces. The values we were all basically taught, he was living by, and it was his decision to put himself there. It was Eitan, that was him. The rest of us didn't take that route.
Chag Chanukah Sameach, Happy Hanukkah. Hanukkah, of course, is a holiday where we recall the incredible heroism of the Maccabees who were fighting against the Greeks and their religious edicts prohibiting the practice of Judaism. And it's a time to really think about our heroes in Israel. So in the middle of the month of Kislev, we marked a day to honor the wounded in this war. On October 6th, Israel had 62,000 wounded war veterans, and that number increased by 20%. We have over 13,000 soldiers who have been wounded in combat, and the IDF and our medical system are doing amazing things and really working miracles along with these incredible heroes to get them back up on their feet. But it's a struggle, and we salute them every day, and we should remember them particularly on Hanukkah. And the other people, of course, that we have to remember are the over 800 IDF soldiers who have been killed fighting this war. We talk a lot on the show about how incredible our victories have been, and all of them are the result of the heroism of our fallen soldiers. And I thought that marking Hanukkah, a good thing would be to talk to the family of one incredible hero who fell on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, Eitan Oster, who was a team commander in the Egoz commando unit that was fighting in Lebanon at the very early stages, even before the actual uptick of the invasion. And Eitan was a stellar student of my husband. And so we were very affected when we heard the news, and we went to the Shiva and we met his extraordinary family and agreed that we would talk about him on this show. So I was very, very glad that Udi Oster, one of Eitan's older siblings, was able to come to tell us a little bit about one of the many fallen heroes, an extraordinary young man, Eitan Oster, and what he did. So first of all, Udi, thank you so much for joining me today on the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, it was Erev Rosh Hashanah, and finished cooking, and I'm sitting in front of the television with my husband, and we saw this video of Eitan wishing Chag Sameach to your family. And my husband was like, hey, I know that guy. He was great. He's my student in Modi'in. And then we just realized while we were watching it that he was killed. So tell me about that day. What happened? It's Erev Chag. How did it happen? What was going on in Lebanon?
So I'll start with the context as a family of like what we went through, and I'll go to Eitan. So Eitan used to send us it seems like it was my mom request whenever he got in, was Gaza at first for a few months, and then he comes out, Rafiach, and then he goes back again. And every time before he entered, he used to send a close family, just siblings and my parents, this video. And the video was almost a little bit humorous, but also pretty deep. And he sent it just to the family. So we, some of us at least, are a little sarcastic. We've been, using to make fun of him when he came back. I was like, dude, what are you? These videos are pretty, heavy. It's just the family. It's not, So we got maybe 10 of those videos whenever he got in. The last one he sent was really about 2 or 3 days before the official ground invasion into Lebanon. I sent this video that ended up spreading after he got killed.
משפחה יקרה, ג'ק צ'סטרון אמר שלוחם אמיתי נלחם לא בגלל שנאתו למי שעומד מולו, אלא בגלל אהבתו למה שעומד מאחוריו. בתקופה האחרונה בצפון הסתובבתי בכל היישובים, ראיתי את קריית שמונה, את משגב, את מטולה, כל היישובים האלה ריקים, ממש הפכו להיות ערי רפאים. זה היה אחד הדברים, וכמובן הצפון כולו שרוף ונטוש. זה אחד הדברים שהיו לי הכי קשים. אנחנו התכוננו הרבה, בגדול זה משהו שהחדירו לי כבר מהרגע שעוד לפני שהתגייסתי, כמו האחים שגדלנו עליהם בבית. ועכשיו הגיע הזמן, והמשימה שלנו זה להחזיר את תושבי הצפון הביתה. אנחנו מוכנים, באים חזקים. אני רואה את זה באמת כזכות היסטורית, ובעזרת השם גם משהו שישפיע על הדורות הבאים ולכל האחיינים שלי שהם לא יצטרכו להתעסק בדברים האלה. אני מכיר ומודע לגודל האחריות שמונח על כתפיי וכל האחריות של הלוחמים תחתיי, ואין גאה ממני להיות חלק מהמשפחה ולהוביל קדימה לקראת הגשמת המשימות. זה גם הזדמנות טובה להגיד לכם שנה טובה, שאני אוהב אתכם מאוד מאוד מאוד, שתכלה שנה וקללותיה ותבוא עלינו השנה הבאה לטובה עם כל ברכותיה. וכמובן אני מצטער כשפגעתי במהלך השנה, מי מכם לצערי לא היה יותר מדי זמן שניפגש ותיפגעו ממני, אבל אני מאמין אם זה קרה בזמנים הקצרים. אני אוהב אתכם מאוד מאוד מאוד, אתם תמיד איתי בלב, וזהו, עד הניצחון. ביי ביי.
At about 10:30 a.m. in the morning, the gate is open in Reut. That's where my parents and Eitan lived, grew up, Reut Modi'in. And the informers basically come. My mom sees them immediately and understand. So he kind of burst, kind of crashing. My youngest sister is 18 years old, Tamar. I was also in the house, and my dad. And very quickly, my dad started making phone calls basically to the siblings to come in. Apparently, either the army let inform the siblings or they can come into the house. And my dad wanted to be the one to basically tell everyone. So he calls in my oldest brother, Elik, tells them, and then he calls me. Everybody basically said, Roshana. So at 10:30 in the morning, we're all kind of cooking or dealing with like preparation for the 3 days holiday. And I get a phone call. My kids, I had a babysitter in the house, and I have my oldest 4 kids, and the oldest one is 7. So he's kind of next to me. I'm full with I was making meatballs. So my hands are occupied with stuff. So I'm answering with my elbow, putting on a speaker, and I hear my dad, who is a very solid person with a little bit of a broken voice, saying, "There's no easy way to say it. Udi, Eitan was killed. Come back home quickly." Something like that. And then I see my oldest kid. It was like, "What happened? Eitan, our uncle Eitan is dead. Eitan was killed." And I'm trying to focus on getting as quickly as I can home to my parents, while trying to manage the situation. I was telling him, Arbel, yes, Sabadubi just called. He told me that Eitan was killed. I'm trying, he'll probably be very sad right now. I need to go back to Reut to be with Sabadubi and Savtel to figure out exactly what happened. And you need to be here and help with your brother and sisters. And then I'm basically texting the babysitter that I'm going out. My brother was killed. I need to go out. So I go out. I tell my wife and I drive back basically to Reut. And we get there slowly. All the siblings were thankfully a relatively big family. Everybody comes in.
It's a big family.
Big family.
Family, 8 kids.
And everybody gather together, and it's very technical. From the informant's standpoint, a lot of questions about nobody knows anything. So all they can tell you is almost like, was killed instantly, if they know or not. We knew he was not killed instantly. It was at a hospital in Tzfat, Ziv in Tzfat.
His body was there.
Yeah, his body was there, and that's all we knew at that point. And they couldn't tell anything. And all my mom wanted to know was what happened. Was he suffering? Did he feel any pain? What exactly happened? But nobody can tell anything at that point. There's also nobody to talk to. And there were a few questions that were kind of in the air. One was the assumption they had was we'll not bury him today. We'll wait until after Rosh Hashanah. But my mom insisted that his soul will be resting today. So we need to bury him today. She doesn't want him to kind of hang in a hospital in Tzfat. He needs to be in his resting place where he deserves it. And the other question that was raised by them is like, do you want to bury him in Mount Herzl? Or would you rather bury him close to home in Modi'in? And my mom was like, it was almost a no-brainer for her. Like, Eitan needs to be in Mount Herzl. Like, that's where he belongs with the heroes he was following basically his entire life. And they were trying to convince her, you'll be close to him. And Modi'in is just like, wouldn't hear of it. Like, he needs to be in Mount Herzl and it needs to happen today. And there's traffic and like the body until it comes. There's a whole thing going around. And also a lot of like quiet. And one of the things I remember is like you see it right now, more people are now exposed to Eitan, to his light and in his say legacy almost. But at the time, it felt like we knew how lucky we are to have him. He also knew how appreciative we are of him. But at that point when we sit, I remember like the family, the close family, it almost felt like his light is gone, like Eitan is gone, done. He's not gonna spread anymore. And the only people in the world that knows about it, that knows what he could have done, are us. That's all. Like this is where that's it. And that's a very depressing thought, a very hard thought. And it's almost like part of the sadness basically start over there. And anyhow, at some point we realized that we'll have to go by ourselves. Like we'll take the cars. We're not going to wait for a bus or anything. And
to Mount Herzl.
Yeah, to Mount Herzl. So I go inside
We're going out there to all of his friends and to his unit and to your friends.
So what we realized, we spread the word a little bit. Like,
because I mean, we saw the video at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, we get like from like some news reporters or some people are kind of asking a little bit about like first the entire family needs to know before they do anything.
Right.
That happened pretty quickly because my dad wasn't waiting for anybody. He wanted to be the one to tell this awful news. So very quickly everybody knew, and then you can basically give the press anything, like basically tell them. And because we had this last video there's a WhatsApp channel, a group channel just focused on Eitan and the family. It's called the Eitan Ballon Gaz, like a gas tank. And the reason is when he was in Gaza, we had no idea what's going on. He didn't obviously take the phone or anything. And in one of the videos of Dover Tzahal, of the
IDF
spokesman, they say we're here with, I think it was Rafiach. We're here in Rafiach with the unit of Egoz, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point we, everybody's blurred their faces, but we see someone that looks like Eitan. You saw like he's a lieutenant, like an officer. And we hear his voice shouting like gas tank, ballon gas, which whenever you enter a house and apparently there's a gas tank, you need to shout so you won't nobody will shoot. Or it was like, that's him for sure. It's absolutely him. And then we changed the name of the group to Eitan Ballon Gaz. And so we kept it this way. And just the last video we had in that group was his video before he entered Lebanon. So we just shared it with, I don't even remember how we got to like that big media publications. So we get in my car. I'm like in the driver's seat, my parents sit in the back. And at that point, the first time I see, I don't know how many people are aware, but since October 7, I don't remember it before, we had many fallen heroes, civilians or soldiers. And usually the city comes out and say, please honor, if you can, take flags and stand outside the streets with an Israeli flag to honor the fallen heroes. And I myself took part of some of them. Initially it was real, and then we had more fallen soldiers and life had to go on. So at some point I was like, okay, I'll try, but if I can't, and at this day I'm going outside. Now I'm the one in the car.
Wait, did you drive your own car?
Yeah, I drove my own car. Everybody took their own cars because the bus couldn't come. There was like traffic and we didn't want to
delay.
We wouldn't delay. And I remember we're going out to Galil Street where in Reut, and we see all the people with the flags. And two things crossed my mind. One, okay, you can't roll it back. Like the news are out. Up until this point, it's like just us in the room. So maybe we'll all pretend it didn't happen. and it's okay. And we'll just go, Eitan will be back in a month like he used to, and we'll laugh about, oh my God, you had no idea what happened. That's kind of was almost a real thought in my head, in my brother and sister's head. But when you go out, it's like, the rumor has spread. Everybody knows that's it. It's real. So it hits you. And the other thing that happens is, before we felt like only us, we were the only one aware of him. And now suddenly all the people that came out of the flag as complete strangers, they came out because of Eitan. There's no other reason why they would stand with the Israeli flag. They came to honor him. And that gives a tiny little bit of comfort and maybe energy, power, because you see that his light isn't really, it's not just us. There are other people who now kind of carry a little bit of his light, carry a little bit of the burden. And I remember even the person, like, it kind of ends and we, breathe in because, all right, we're now heading to Mount Herzl. And then, 200 meters afterwards, there's another guy with like a flag, and it's like another boost of a little bit of energy. Going back, like afterwards, I thought a lot about like the way Eitan spoke about his role, even pre-October 7, like we're all part of a chain. I'm going to probably talk about it soon, about the way he lived his life. But that kind of made it real, because it was basically a chain of flags of Israel. We all kind of a part. Those people I don't know, are not part of like some kind of a bigger image or bigger picture.
So tell us about what.
Yeah.
What, first of all, so I remember one of the things that when I met with your family, they were talking about how essentially Eitan was the tip of the spear. I mean, the very tip in his unit that that the army had to be convinced that we could actually do the operation. And Egoz, which is a commando unit that started with Golani, and they're mainly focused on Hezbollah in the north, and that they were sent in months before to do these small raids of Hezbollah positions. And so they were the ones who essentially proved to the IDF higher command that the IDF could do this, right?
Exactly right. And he pushed for that. When his team came out of Gaza, they basically went up to Lebanon. And
when was that about?
That was about a month and a half before the official ground invasion, before Rosh Hashanah.
So it was like in July or
something along these lines, yes. And he insisted, basically with everybody he could, the commander of Egoz, and the battalion and up the ranks, that they should do raids first, like maybe relatively close to Miskavam and the border, and then deeper into Lebanon, both to understand the topography and geography of what's happening there as a preparation for the ground invasion, as well as maybe even more importantly to infuse confidence in the people, higher ranks and the foot soldiers, that this is possible. And he was pushing really hard. Now his team was just about to get released from the army. Like they were like done with their service. Yeah. So they had maybe 2 months left. Like they all kind of, most of them are now post their army service. And there was a question internally, like, would you now go and risk yourself in this very, very high risk special operations, beyond enemy lines, if you're like just that close, survived the entire war just like close. But he obviously had I'm saying obviously because of knowing him, but there was no doubt in his mind that that's the role that they play now. And he was good, just like the video he sent, he was very good of explaining and giving these values to his soldiers, and they were all like, we're in for it. And after a few kind of debates within the military, he was able to convince them to go and for the first kind of a special ops in Lebanon. It was very, very successful. And then it's followed by a few other operations based on the template of the plan that he made. And then
Eitan himself, he's 22, right?
Yeah, he was 22. And he talked to us. He couldn't share much about the story, but he talked to us. And we saw how proud he was at like almost his peak performance and career within the military. He got recognized for his ability to manage these type of sophisticated operation, and it got to a point where he was presenting it to the kind of very high rank officer, the plan and what they should do, which most people aren't doing. He was recognized in his life as the top kind of officer in Egoz that has like a very bright career ahead of him. And, you know, again, that also gives a little bit of comfort. On the eve of the day before, they already entered Lebanon, and the way the operation works, and as we kind of managed the pieces together afterwards, they got in, and the commando brigade was basically the first one to open to get beyond enemy lines. And at the top of the commander brigade, Egoz and Maglan and so forth, was Eitan's like Egoz, and the peak, like the first person of Egoz was Eitan's team, Udi Oster. And Eitan was one of the first basically to cross to the Lebanon's border. One of the interesting things, I was like, I asked his team, I was like, well, you were the first one to basically lead the entire military Israel army in the ground invasion. How does it work? I was like, practical. And he said, what do you mean? We cut the fence and we go. I was like, what do you mean cut the fence? And so they said they'll try and find the recording, but they said that there was a guy with like a big wire cutter, and he cuts the fence. And they didn't have the wire cutter. It was like someone from the engineering corp. So they kind of loaned it, they cut it, and then they cross in. And he said that the first debate they have as they crossed was between Eitan and the guy that owned the wire cutter.
Who gets to go?
It's like, where did you put the wire cutter? It's like, it's right next to where we cut. But where is it? Bring it back to me. And there's a whole kind of like the small pieces of things that you don't hear about. They got in the first night. They usually operate at night. They operate at night. The day they kind of rest, it went very smoothly. All based basically on the plan. And people kept on telling us that Eitan knew the best this area. He was there before. It was one of the reasons he insisted on being the first and not let anyone, other teams or he believed that they're equipped, they're the most professional team. And he himself knows this topography and the plan of the mission the best, and he should lead it. And afterwards, Eviatar, one of my younger brothers, older than Eitan, told me that they were talking just a day before.
He and Eitan?
And Eitan told him, I'm fully aware that the mission we're heading towards is very dangerous, and I've already accepted that I may not come back home. And Eviatar asks him, like, would you rather choose a different mission, be again part of the war, but you know, you guys we've been fighting since October 7th. Your team is 2 months or a month away from finishing up getting out. Would you rather choose, like, usually you can maybe swap with, and it was like, I wouldn't hear of it. He said, I and my team practice, like, exercise and trained for this specific moment. We are the best at that. And there's no way I will have anybody that isn't as good as us doing this mission. Like, it's not even a question. And I'll make sure the team feels the same way. Like, I'll work with him to make sure we're all in the same.
That was one of the things that's so remarkable about Eitan is his ability to inspire others. You know, there's something, sometimes the student or the young person who tries to imbue kind of the historical consciousness in others sounds like he's just showing off, or you know, or people are like, why are they talking about Herzl again, or whatever. And Eitan just incredibly charismatic. I mean, he would. Your mother told me this story. I think that he took his team to Kfar Etzion in like they could go on a fun day, and he decided to take them to a museum of the fall of Kfar Etzion, of Gush Etzion in the War of Independence in 1947. It happened, and he that was what really he was inspired, and he was able to inspire others. What
I specifically this one of the so-called benefits of being in this spot is you get exposed to a lot of things that I had no idea. I knew who Eitan was. I don't think I realized how deep, how how both charismatic and how deeply like the values that we all kind of share, he lived it. Like he lived every piece of the things we talk about, like you said, Herzl, he actually lived it. And one of the things we get exposed is those like recordings, whether like a WhatsApp voice message he sent to his friend as they were in Gaza, or this recording of him talking with his soldiers on like kind of a fun day, 3 days before the war outbreak, 3 days before October 7 on Sukkot. And I listened to it and it's almost like shocking, both how he realized before the war, what may happen, what his generation needs to carry. And I relate specifically about that because I really like, just I can read just a quote of what he said, like translated into English. He's speaking basically the story of Gush Etzion. They're all there. They kind of help renovate or like fix it.
If you send us also the video, we can also.
I'll also share with you the video. And they and one of the things he asked is everybody talked about this generation as the TikTok generation, or like almost like who, like those guys are not, like they grew up with iPads in their hands, that they're not even closely remote to what used to happen with the heroes of the past generation. And Eitan tells them at the end of this kind of fun trip, he says, it's a question I've wrestled with for a long time. Is our generation different than those past generation of the heroes? The generation of the 1948 war, Yom Kippur War, or of Moshe Zilberschmidt, who was like the leader of Gush Etzion. But looking at all of you today, I can say without a doubt, we are the same. You are the same. When the time comes, and it will, this is 3 days before the war, when the time comes and it will, whether in Lebanon, Gaza, Iran, or anywhere we're cold, we will all show up. It's something deeply engraved in our DNA, binding us in an unbroken chain to the warriors of 1948, those of Yom Kippur War and beyond. When there will be a need for our nation, we will put everything aside and defend our people. Now, and then he says, now it's been a long day. There's pizza for everybody. Make sure to only get 3 slices per person so everybody will have some. And that mix of like taking care of the very physical, practical thing of today and connect it to something way bigger, it's pretty insane. One of the things he also spoke about, and I think it's something that we got exposed with talking with all of the folks that fought with him and survived, is he said that there are heroes that are living as heroes throughout their life. So they live in this mind space that you said they're bigger. They have these values. And Eitan was like that. He always spoke like that. He was also humorous and he had his own tricks, but he always were able to live up to the values we all spoke about. But not everybody are like that. And so there are heroes that you can see them like that. And there are some people that you have no idea. And what he believed in was when the trigger happens, when something like that, there's an actual need, then in our DNA, Jewish people or the people, it will trigger that type of core capability to stand up, leave everything aside and go defend the people. And if you look what happened, Eitan and all his friends and the people of October 7, you see that that's like reality. There's a random civilians who would just like leave everything and just drive up south. Eitan himself had another thing about his characteristics. He had no excuses for himself. He never had like use any excuses himself for anything. And he had many reasons. As an example, even on October 7, he was at home on vacation. And his day job was to command new recruits, basic training for Egoz. None of them could actually go and fight just like the few weeks in the army. And when he heard what's happening, just like maybe an hour after the first sirens, he left everything, went to shul, say like the last prayer with my dad, took his stuff, went on a gear and went to the base, where he coupled with a few other leaders. And they themselves decided, and again, it wasn't his job, to take the guns, like on gear, leave their recruits, like their soldiers behind, drive in a private car all the way south to help. That was basically how they did.
Get to?
They fought in Irim. And on the way, he was able, he saw obviously what many people saw firsthand, like, dead bodies all the way in like this horrible road. He also saw Machat Anachal.
The great
So he broke. He broke his diskit.
His
the
dog tag.
To take with him so people would know. And then they fought in Irim. Steinberg,
Steinberg, his father was here.
And they went in Irim and post like that was like in the first basically few days it was fought in Irim and in a few others places there, releasing families, like taking them out from the houses and my brother asked him like, what did they tell you when you came there? Like, how did they react when you came? And he said that some reacted like very happy to see us and like, thank you. And some were very upset at us. They said, where were you? And my father asked him like, how did you respond? Like, what was your response to that? And he said, what can I say? We failed. We failed.
He failed.
Yeah. And he felt that it was his failure. It was his failure. And obviously it wasn't like he was a lieutenant. Asked for it. But it was his failure to protect because he was part of the military. That was his job, his duty, and they failed. And in the talk he had with his recruits post October 7, before they entered Gaza for the first time, he said he wrote we got his diary, what he wrote notes before he was speaking with the soldiers. Everything was very organized, very professional. And one of the things he writes is, we as a nation here, he wrote that we failed. Again, those people got basically recruited almost a month before October 7. We failed, and now it's our time to fix it. And we will not stop until all the hostages are back, and we will not stop until all the folks from the north are back in their cities safe. And that's the way he thought, and that's the way he spoke about things with everybody, basically. And something that I remember I was talking with my dad about is he felt like it's his failure, where in reality it's our generation. In other words, I feel I'm now in between, even though years-wise it feels like I'm maybe closer to Eitan. When reality I feel like I'm
you met Udi, and he was, you're 16 years old.
Yeah. It's our failure for giving up to this tactical feeling of peace and kind of calmness, where we can focus on our jobs or on things, sacrificing the future strategically. We were measuring things, but how many people were killed that year, and the least, the better, kind of almost in a tactical manner. And the price was paid by this generation. And it was also very important for Eitan, as he spoke in all the videos. He didn't speak about himself at all. It was always like, I'm good, I'm happy, I'm ready. We're all good, happy, ready. We slept.
So what was he like? I mean, he was a hero, and he was a hero in his lifetime, and he lived by heroic ideals of Israel's heroes that preceded him. But what was he like as a brother? I mean, what was he interested in? What did he talk about on normal stuff?
He was so I think it's the family in a way. Our family have 8 siblings. So they were the first batch of 4. This is my oldest brother, Elik, and then Mirav 2 years after, and 2 years after it's me and my twin brother.
Not 2 days, 2 years. Don't put too much on 4 months.
2 years. And then after I have 4 kids, so I can imagine why my parents took kind of a break for 7 years. So they took a break after the first batch of 7 years, and then Eviatar was born. And a few years later, it was Eitan, my sister, and then Eitan, and then Tamar. So those bottom 3 are basically another batch, and Eviatar was kind of in the middle, jumping between the 2 batches. And Eitan always wanted, from very young age, 4 years old, always wanted to feel and be part of the older batch. So the way he spoke and the way he behaved, he always felt like he needs to carry himself as an adult. And I remember I was with my wife, Sarit. He was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7. We said, let's have a fun day. I'll come back. We'll go to the mall, can buy some candies or ice cream. And I'm walking with him. And every time we would have walked or talked, his discussion, he would open up the conversation. It's like, so how was work? Also, I tried to have like a deep voice, like, how was work? How was with Sarit? And I was like, Eitan, work is good. Well, you want like an ice cream? Well, let's go get ice cream. And even that simple question, he would like, I don't know if you want ice cream, can get ice cream, but kind of, it's up to you, what you want to do. And as he grew up, he also became very important for him to be the mediator. So we're very close family, but as a close family, you also have like the debates. Where are we heading on Shabbat? Is it good for us? There's kids, and there's all this kind of a family interaction. And Eitan would like send messages to me, are you good with this? And then he would send messages from like very young age, like 9 years old, trying to make peace, make sure everybody is like together. Everybody's happy, mommy's happy, dad is happy, the families are happy. It was very important for him that we all kind of stick around together, we all come to Shabbat. He would always give up his room for the family that would come in like host for Shabbat. So it's like a 25 hours time where we all have to be stuck together as religious family. And Eitan will always give away his room. Now, when he was young, we say, okay, fine. Kind of, I would say, makes sense. Very nice of him. He did the same thing after October 7th. So he would come like, I don't know, for like 24 hours or 48 hours break from one operation to another. And then some people like come to the house for Shabbat. My mom insisted that nobody touches his room. So whenever he comes as a surprise, he'll have everything ready for him. Completely understandable. She wanted to make sure that he feels like everything is perfect when he comes. But Eitan would sleep on the couch and let other people go into his room. He would come back home and he would cook for Shabbat. He would clean the house. He will do like barbecue outside. He would talk to Tamar and ask her about school as if like we're all like nothing happens. As if he was growing as a normal person. And that was very much like him from a young age. And he stuck to his character even through this really rough time. And you can have him on the calls that my mom recorded, maybe anticipating something bad at some point. You can hear that he talks about the fight they had in Hamed in like Gaza. And then he asked Tamar about like the last exam she had on UBET, like on 12th grade. You're like, in what world would that be something that you even think about where you're fighting with, people are getting killed? Like, and that's kind of the way he was. From a very young age. Something that I think the dissonance between how he died and the character that now everybody, or hopefully most people will learn to meet or to know, and how he was as a kid. So when he was 7 or 8 years old, he was very afraid of stuff. He was afraid of like thieves at night. He was afraid of like the darkness. And those combined together made him not want to go to sleep at all. He would like go around the house and kind of check that all the windows are closed and the door is locked. And he would not go asleep. And that, lasted for like a few months. And my dad at some point said, look, he can't grow up like this. And his solution to the problem, my dad, was I'll wake up and we'll do like a guard duty, right? So you'll guard the house until midnight and then I'll wake up and I'll guard the house until 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Then I'll wake you up and everything is fine. And my dad actually did it because Eitan used to wake up.
To make sure.
And it's pretty funny when we told his soldiers that. He said, oh yeah, we're familiar with that, tactics of waking up, making sure that you guys are in guard duty. But as you can imagine with, 8 siblings and so forth, this is not, I can't imagine how my dad survived even 1 week doing it. And Eitan, he was maybe 8 years old, also saw that on my dad, that this is too much of a toll. And he realized that it's up to him to manage the fear. Nobody, it's not gonna, the help from outside it's up to him and he's capable. So he took a knife, like a kitchen knife, and he took it to his bed and he told my dad that he's good now. Like he's no longer afraid, he's fine. Like he doesn't need to wake up at night. Where truth was, he was really scared still, but he was learning how to manage his fears. And he got really good at this. And one of the things that his soldier told us, it was also prevalent in the last battle, was Eitan was always the first one to enter. Every place, every hidden, like it's called a itur, every area, he would be the first one to enter, even though the methodology of a platoon leader or a team leader is you have someone else going in first and you're second or third, again, depends on the mission. And one of the sayings in the army, in Hebrew, you say like echad elai. So the commander would say echad elai, like a soldier comes to me.
One at a time.
One come to me, and then you put him in the front, and the first person goes, and the commander behind him. And they all said that Eitan was never a echad elai commander. He was never saying echad elai, was always the first one to go. And the way Eitan managed the fear, it's not like he wasn't scared. He managed the fear by saying, I'm going to cope with that. I'm going to manage it. So I'm going to take control and I'll be the first one to go in. And at the last battle, one of the things, what we've learned was at 4:30 a.m. or something along these lines, where everything is dark, they go with their
night vision goggles.
They go in this house quietly, and they see that it's like a 3 flats building. They go in the living room, they see ammunition, they see that there is something around happening there. And Eitan's it's in the living room, and then they recognize a terrorist that seems like was surprised because they were able to get quietly inside. They recognize one of the Hezbollah Red One forces. They start the fire, they shoot the guy, and then there was like a hell break loose inside the house. There's a whole Red One forces, 6 or so.
So they surprised them, but they were there and they were armed.
They were armed. Like it was basically preparation for them entering, but they did it as a surprise. And there was a whole battle. 2 people, soldiers from Eitan force, basically fell in the living room. There were 2 who were able to.
They were killed.
Yeah, they were killed. Itai Giat from the engineering corps, and Eitan's and one of Eitan's soldiers, Ol Mansour. And they were in the living room, but the team didn't know whether or not they're killed at the moment. There were also 2 wounded, also in the living room, right in the crossfire. And Eitan was also hit in his chest from probably a shrapnel of a grenade or something. He's basically falling backwards. And then he retreats a little bit to the front door with the other soldiers that were next to him. And they see that he has like bleeding stuff like that's basically crossed into his chest. But what they told us, he acted as if nothing happened. So they assumed it's maybe like a kind of a flash wound or something, because he basically kept on commands. He sent his lieutenant to go around to try and get from the roof to group with the other team that went up the stairs. And he's focused on basically saving the folks in the living room that are in the crossfire and the grenades. The 4 people who were there, 2 we now know they were killed, and 2 others basically survived afterwards. So Eitan is out. There's fire from like machine guns inside the house, outside the house, and it was hurt in the chest. And one of the gunners that was with him said that at that point they were the first time in their since the war began, they were very scared. They were like almost departed from the entire army, the first force. It was very clear that until everything clears out, there's no evacuation by helicopters, by anything.
Because the topography was so bad, right? I mean, it was a crazy sort of area. It was covered by scrub and you like went
bushes
down.
And trees and boulders. Yeah, it was impossible. Yeah.
No, go on.
It was very clear when they went, and I think looking back, Eitan knew, like he was very professional about that. I think he knew that the chances of getting hurt in Lebanon in the first invasion and being saved quickly is very low, because up until everything clears out, you can't send helicopters, you can't send even tanks because of the ambushes and the forces that are there. The topography just doesn't let you to do anything. And the army didn't want to repeat the same mistakes of Lebanon, the second Lebanon war, where on day 1, an hour after, we had like 3 tanks up in the air from like ambush. So that's why it has to be by foot. It has to be commando forces, and only after they finish their job, you'll be able to get the heavy guns. So as he was hurt the first, it was pretty clear there's no chopper coming in the next 20 minutes like you now have in Gaza. So he got hurt, went back, and Rosio, the guy next to him, he said, I was scared that at that moment, Eitan will say, Echad Elai. He did not want to be the first person in the room because there was machine gun right on the door. So Eitan was looking at him and he says, come to me, not Echad Elai. And he was behind him. So he put him behind him. Maybe he realized he was scared and he wanted to show, to lead in from the front. He enters the room, start putting fire, shooting basically at the Radwan forces. And they all lead their machine guns now to Eitan. 2 soldiers that were there were able to run up the stairs. And basically, again, we learn after the fact that he saved them their lives. And then Eitan get hit on both of his thighs very high up with multiple bullets of a machine gun being thrown in one in the helmet that doesn't penetrate, but probably shock him out. He basically falls at the entrance to the house. And lose consciousness for a few minutes. And the guy was next to him.
What's his name?
Rosio. The guy was next to him, Rosio, called us on Rosh Hashanah a few times. Now, what we end up learning is that the battle lasted for 5-6 hours after Eitan was fallen. So when we were already at Mount Herzl burying him, his team was still fighting at that area. There were more than 50 Radwan forces that were.
How did they get him out, though? I mean, I understood that he actually ended up dying from loss of blood.
That's right. Yeah, Rosio pulled him out maybe 2 seconds after he fell, but he called us to say sorry for not pulling up immediately because he was scared that he will die at the spot. It was very important for him, so I answered the phone on Rosh Hashanah to kind of hear him and says, hey, it's Rosio. I was Eitan with Eitan, and again, maybe 2 seconds, maybe less than that. He pulled him out. They put cat, basically to try prevent the blood from flowing out from his thighs. That is relatively painful, so he woke up and he started giving commands again on the network. Still kind of a operating situation, where is the team, and kind of asking about his soldiers. And at some point, his lieutenant realizes that Eitan is not at a place to function and actually but he doesn't let go because he feels responsible for everything that is happening. So he goes on and on the radio, Eitan, this is Yasu, your lieutenant. I'm taking command. It's all good. Kind of you can let go, focus on, it's good. You taught us well, we're good. And Eitan, still losing blood. And the team at that point realizes that he will not, they'll need to do it by foot. He will not survive if they keep him like that. Rosio and a few others just starts carrying, and a paramedic and the medic start carrying the stretcher basically up the mountain. And that lasted, they're trying to explain to me that how hard it is when you have blood that you need to infuse, to hold it high, and you need to carry a person over a boulder of a meter and a half high over and over again at an area that you're not super familiar with, because Eitan was the main navigator and you had another one, the main navigator, who was stuck at the house still fighting. That took them about 4 hours going up this steep mountain. And after the fact, we learned that some people tried to help Rosio and swap him with the stretcher because it's just, and he said, I'm not leaving him. I'm sticking around to my commander until I see with my own eyes that he goes on a helicopter safe. And when they got up, again, another procedure, they want to put him on a hammer, on a jeep to drive to the helicopter. And Rosio wouldn't let go. Up until a point where the doctor who was there and we met afterwards said, I told this guy, he didn't know his name, you either come off the Jeep right now, the vehicle right now, or we won't be able to drive. And only at that point, Rosio was all right. And he kind of let go. At that point in time, was still alive, but, kind of diminishing. And then at the helicopter, it was clear that he's in a critical condition and he died at the hospital. one of the things to note is it was very important for us and my mom to know exactly what happened and what he felt. And there were a lot of people. It was like war. There were more than 50 wounded soldiers at that event. So it was a mass, kind of the first kind of...
like 10 killed, is that right?
It was, I think there were 6 that day, 6. And then the day after there were maybe 2 or 3 more. So we were trying to meet all the people that were in touch even for a second or a minute with Eitan. And I especially remember, and they all come with like their tactical uniforms with like the dust. I was like right from Lebanon, and then they go right back up just to meet with the families. And one of the meetings I really remember was like the 3 people outside of the team, like some of the team members that came, 3 people like a medic, a paramedic, and kind of another soldier that were with Eitan when they receiving Eitan when they went up the steep hill before they got into the Jeep and the helicopter. And they're all sitting in front of us with their uniforms. And my mom is asking them like questions to their like, where exactly was it hit? And everything that's possible. Now, they were up the mountain. They weren't at, the bottom. They weren't part of the battle. But she's asking again some questions about the battle. And I remember that I lose my patience. I was like, Mom, they don't know that. They were up. They don't know that. But they were like, almost like, it's fine. And they're repeating again and again with like infinite amount of patience. And I remember that Eitan was always like that. He used to call in this phone calls during the war, and with the family, kind of a group video chat. And my mom would ask him again the same, like, who is that commander, ranks, all this stuff. Now, we all went to the army, not expert, definitely not like a combat like Eitan, but Eitan was repeating the same thing to my mom. And one of the things that was very almost impossible for me to fathom as someone who doesn't have a lot of patience, how he would never say, Mom, I already told you, or Mom, I don't have much time right now, or he will just repeat the same thing over and over again in a calm, happy way, as if this question was never asked before, and he's just going to do it again. And when that person was telling my mom again the same story, he was hit here, this is what we did, like as if there's nobody else in the world. His friends aren't fighting and dying right now in Lebanon. There's no other families. It's just us and my mom. And he has all the time in the world to answer all the questions that he has. For me, I feel like, that's a little bit of Eitan. They're very professional, very calm, very patient. And after maybe an hour that we go through this, and they're all giving us the feeling there's no words, it was just us and Eitan, and we have all the time in the world. I don't know where I came from, but I asked them, are you like reservists, or you're like that's kind of your day job? And they all say, oh, we're reservists. And they asked, so what do you do in life? I don't know why I asked it. And it was so out of place because we're all surrounded like Eitan. It's like, what are you talking about? Everybody looks at me, and the 3 looks at me like, it doesn't matter. Almost like, who cares? Who cares? It's a different world. Like, this is not a time where we talk about that. This is not the world we're in. And I said, I care. Like, what do you do? And then one of them says, I'm studying in some random college, construction or something like engineering. The other person says, I want to study medicine. And the third says, I think I'm going to start computer science, again, some random college. None of it was super, you hear their stories and why they did in the beginning of the war. They're like heroes, like the definition of heroes. But when they take off their uniforms and what they actually do, these are just random people. It's not Harvard, even though Harvard right now is something else, but it's not Harvard.
Better to go to a random college than to go to Harvard.
But it's not like the Technion. It's just a random and place. So one, I felt so proud to be part of this nation where those random people are heroes and they just walk among us. It's not like they don't say anything. They don't write on LinkedIn, oh, I was in this battle and that's what I did. And also I felt like I don't know how to solve this problem, but in my company, when I interview, those people would not pass the bar to even get into the interview because they just haven't, what do they have? They have I served in the army. None of them, Eitan would not write I was a team commander in Egoz. It's just not his character. This is not, he just say I was in the army for 4.5 years. That's it. He would not tell anything about it. He's just like, that was his job, and now he's trying to do something else. And those people would do the same thing. And I was just like, oh, he doesn't have the experience, I wish in the LinkedIn there was like, what do I do as a person? And I can click and see, this is the battle that was in. This is what I did. This is something that to keep in mind. And one of the things, Eitan recognized it, by the way. And the two things I remember about it, one...
Because your family, just to go back a second, I mean, you guys are all brainiacs. I mean, you're brilliant. Your father is the head of the Ministry of Defense of Israel's version of DARPA. He invented the laser. I mean, it's like, not the laser, but the laser.
The iron beam, yeah.
Iron beam. I mean, and all of you are... And Eitan was a star pupil of my husband who was teaching him cyber warfare. So, I mean... you're all very, very bright. And he just sort of, like you said, he would talk to your youngest sister and say, how did you do on your test while he's in the middle of battle? I mean, he was in both worlds, but he decided that he was going to go in a different direction, and he didn't make a lot out of it either. I mean, he just went and did it. And
yeah, it's a little comforting even. I remember on Rosh Hashanah, we basically had 3 days to spend together. And there are two things that
you
almost...
mean before everybody descended on
after
you?
we descended you on the Shiva, on the kind of Kanah Shiva, as we didn't really have a Shiva. And there's two things that happen automatically. One is you try and find areas where I wish I could tell him this. He didn't know that, kind of remorse of like something that we're missing. That, if I just knew, I would have done. And thankful to Eitan, who was very thoughtful about it. He made sure there's no loose ends with anybody in the family. Like he worked hard to make sure that. So none of us have any feeling of regret in that sense, that we could have told him something or, and another thing that I really remember is there was kind of Eitan was sharing with everybody, and he made you feel like your opinion matters a ton to his decision, to his life. So he was able to go to the intelligence route, just like all of us. And he also, unlike all of us, he also had the opportunity to go into the special forces. And it was a real debate. It was not the kind of, your husband may know, but he was not like all I want to do is like be a command like Sayed Matkal, like the Navy SEALs. He had the opportunity to do other things. He was very interested in like the tech. It was very bright in like physics and computer science. And he didn't also see his life as like, I'm going to be a military career at all. It wasn't like the definition of what he wanted to do. And it was really talking with us, should I go there? Should I go here? And, we had like kind of a debate in the family as if our opinion mattered that much. But what was clear, he chose at the end to go to the special forces route. And it was very clear that the values we were all basically taught, he was living by. And it was his decision to put himself there. And it wasn't something that like I influenced as much. It was Eitan. That was him. The rest of us didn't take that route. And one of the things he told my dad just at the beginning, like I think mid into his like training. So one of the missions, a training they had was to go in the Ramat Golan, Golan Heights, undercover, as if it's Lebanon, and be next to like the main track where hikers in Israel, like families go, undercover, like camouflage in the bush, in the siach, and so nobody sees. And Eitan writes to my parents afterwards and says, that was like exactly how I see myself. I want to be there for Israel, for our people, without them knowing I'm there. And that's very much like him, and it seems like it's very much like a lot of other heroes that we now get to see and experience. And another thing that we heard from one of his students at Bnei Akiva, like he was the youth group, the youth group Bnei Akiva. So he was like a guy there, an instructor.
Yeah.
And one of the activities he had with him was He said that on the Memorial Day in Israel, everybody talks about the fallen soldiers, fallen heroes, the fallen soldiers, and nobody talks about the heroes that were there, but they haven't fallen. They're within us. And I'm going to talk to you about those people. So we had a whole kind of activity about the people who are still alive that are fortunate not to have died or to fall, but to recognize that they're here, they're with us. So that's kind of another perspective that he had.
What are you guys doing? What are your thoughts about what you want to do to, memorialize him? I mean, he was such an extraordinary young man.
It was important to Eitan while he was alive to educate and to share the values. We now know that he was pretty good at it. He helps us a lot with the materials. And the main thing we want to do is also share that as if he is still here. So how to share the values that he thought was very important. He lived by with other people through his image. And we're now formulating exactly the what type of program, like youth program, or how we want to kind of take action with that. But that's something around the educational route. It was important for him. He did it with his soldiers and anybody that interacted with him. And we would like to have that carry on.
And your family is, you guys are having a horrible year.
Yeah.
Because not only, because Alec, your oldest brother, when he was on his, riding his bike to visit his grave on Mount Herzl, he got hit he got hit by a truck and he's in the hospital. So first of all, we should all pray for his speedy recovery, Eliakim ben Yael, in our prayers. And also, can you tell us a little bit about how he's doing in your family?
Sure. Elik is stable in a sense that there's no life risk anymore. And he's starting the kind of rehabilitation back. But it's a long process. It's a very long process, and we all are hopeful, and at least the doctor said that there's no reason not to be hopeful and optimistic. So we're all hopeful and optimistic he'll get back to us exactly as he used to be. Maybe a little bit less bitter sometimes, so maybe a little bit improvement. But
get rid of that snarky sense of humor.
Exactly. And we are surrounded by a lot of people that want to help. And Elik was able to touch many people in his writings about the experience he went through in Eitan. Gave words to feeling that we as a family couldn't really express well. So on his Facebook, he used to write big pieces about Eitan.
Before he was killed or after?
Mainly after. Mainly after he was killed, about the experience he's going through, the mourning and in general about Eitan. And that's something that we also miss because he felt like Eitan was maybe the heart and Elik was the mouth, the tongue. And now we kind of miss them both. But we're a strong family. We'll prevail, and it's also important. Like my dad said it right after Eitan was killed. In the 3 days, we could moan and be sad about what we'll not have anymore, which is kind of a big part of the sadness that adults feel is the future you imagine for the person you love that will not happen. My kids don't think that way as much. So if they want Eitan now, they could be really sad, cry. But if they don't want him right now and they think about the past, they're very happy. There's not a glimpse of sadness because Eitan was amazing. And my dad asked that in these 3 days, we do like almost a Thanksgiving meal, like to say thanks for all the 22 years we did have with Eitan and the good things that we had. And I think that's kind of a good, we all in Israel experiencing a really tough year in a sense. I think it's important to focus also on what's good and the happiness. Represent what we do have, all these heroes that we're surrounding with, and not just like kind of let the sadness or depression in a way take over. And it's hard, but we're trying to do the same thing as a family. Focus on who we have here, the experience we had before with Eitan, and also I'm sure, as we can see, I'm sure we're heading towards a very bright future. That's what I believe, and a lot of it thanks to all these people, including Eitan. So I think we should all be optimistic about the future and also happy about what we had in the past and also about the present in a sense.
And I think it's also important for us to see Eitan as he saw himself, which is as a link in a chain, an unbroken chain of Jewish heroism. And like you said, with the medics and the search and rescue who took him back to Israel, that these are just normal people. And he was right. You trigger it. Like he said to his soldiers 3 days before October 7th. It's a trigger, and it goes off, and everybody knows that, we're one people. We have to defend ourselves, and it should inspire us in our lives and in raising our kids. And he's now, we didn't want him to be, but he's a link in that chain, and we're blessed with his memory. And I just. My heart goes out to you and your family, and I think with me, you have thousands of people watching this. So I just want to say thank you very much for your sacrifice, and
thank you for having me and letting me share his story.
He's amazing. I want to thank you very much for joining me today, and give my best regards to your family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Okay, and we'll see you guys soon in another edition of the Caroline Glick Show. Take care.